In this tutorial, I just want to show you how to do some basic text editing in Adobe InDesign. I'm not actually going to type anything out. I'm going to use a method called fill with placeholder text in order to just give you an example of how text can be altered and worked with within the program. I'm going to start by using the type tool, which is over on the left, looks like a capital T. And if I click that and then go up here to the corner of my guide, which I laid out during the beginning while setting up this document, I can drag it out and it should snap to that pretty easily, pretty clearly. So I'm going to do that, and I'm actually going to drag out a text box for each of these columns that I have so that I can show you how they interact with one another. Again, this is fairly easy. InDesign helps it snap to so that I get a nice clean result each time. Now I'm going to use my type tool and select inside of this first one. And I'm going to go up to Type menu at the very top, and towards the bottom there's one that says Fill with Placeholder Text. This fills it with lorem ipsum. So I get this nice full column of text now, and you can see that it defaults to left alignment, right ragged. You can see the ragged edge here, and then the nice clean edge along the left side. So this is left aligned. What we want to look at is different ways to manipulate this text within the software to get clean results. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and when I go to the type tool, you'll notice that everything up here changes. Suddenly I get all these different parameters at the top of the screen that allow me to alter this type. So I'm going to click inside, and I'm going to do something like Command A to select everything. You can also do that from the top menu by going out to Edit and Select All, but Command A works just fine. The first thing I'm going to do is actually make the size of this type smaller. This is really easily done. I'm going to drop it down to 10 point, which is standard for print. 10 point type is relatively common. It defaults to 12, but more often than not you'll see 12 used. I'm sorry, 10 used. If I select it all again, I'm looking for increasing the line gap between, I'm increasing the gap between each line. This is referred to as a baseline shift. I'm going to increase it to 14. So I have 10 point type and then a 14 point baseline between each of these. Again, these are real measurements. There's 12 points to a pica, and 6 picas are 1 inch. 72 points is 1 inch. So these are real measurements that can be measured, and the impact is seen in real life when it's actually printed. So digitally, we use those as well, especially in InDesign. It has less meaning when you're working in Photoshop and Illustrator unless you're doing something to a particular size. InDesign, however, is very particularly geared towards print. Alright, so back to my type tool again, and I'm going to show you a couple of the other things up here. Selecting all of it again, Command A. I'm going to look at some of these other options for alignment. I could go with something like center alignment. Has kind of an interesting look to it, usually not very great for columns. So I'm going to select it all, and I'm going to go to Justify Left. And when you hover over it actually says Justify with last line aligned left. That basically prevents that issue of this last line, which is much shorter, being spread the full width of the column, which is what would happen if you did a normal Justify. Now what's good about this particular layout, here if I bring this out, you'll see Justify Left used a lot in print because it creates clean edges along both sides. And that's very appealing. It helps it have a nice solid shape, although left aligned ragged right is used as well. It really depends on the context of the piece, and it depends on what other shapes, what elements you bring in, and kind of the tone you're trying to sell. I'm going to go back to normal view. Now what I really want to do is to have this text go all the way through here and through these other columns as well. This is actually really easily done in InDesign, and I'm going to show you the method for doing that. For one thing, I'm going to go ahead and type fill with placeholder text, just fill that up the rest of the way. And what I'm wanting you to do is not just to add more text into this one, because I could do that. I could go to type and fill it with placeholder text. But what I really want is for this one to thread through so that it continues automatically down this column and down this column. And this really is very easily done. If I select this one, again using the arrow tool, which is my default, I can look down here at the bottom. There's this extra square kind of floating here just above the bottom corner. Let me push in really closely. So my bottom corner is down here, and then I have this extra square. If I click that, it loads my cursor with this text, and then I can go up to the top left-hand corner of this next column. If I click there, it has threaded the text over. It doesn't show you that it's done that because I don't have any additional text yet, but it has threaded it over. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. That square appears on it now, and if I click it, it loads my text, and I can go up to my new column and thread that one. The result of this is that I can now put my cursor, click inside here, do type, fill with placeholder text, and it fills both of them automatically. That also means that if I take a huge chunk out and delete this, it brings them all back automatically. These are essentially one text box now because I have threaded them together. You'll notice also I can do Command A, select them all, and I can change all of them together to different alignments, different type sizes, things like that. So when you're putting together multiple text boxes and you have an article to paste in, essentially, threading these together will keep you from having issues. Threading them together will make your life easier. This is the basics of working with type in InDesign. Just remember that I lay them down on these columns so that it would snap to them, but I can also move them around wherever I want, and they remain threaded together. This is a very flexible point-and-click program. It's probably the most user-friendly out of everything that Adobe has to offer. So try not to be limited to what you see with the guides you set up or with the options the software gives you. Arrange things based on what looks good in composition and worry about the rest later.